I went to my mountain lodge to refresh, and found my son and his wife's family living there. The tires crunched over gravel like bones beneath snow. That sound, sharp, final, echoing through the silent valley, was the first thing that told me something was wrong. My mountain lodge had always been a place of refuge, a place where the wind whispered rather than howled, where the lake breathed quietly instead of roaring, where I could finally hear my own thoughts. But as my truck rolled to a stop, I noticed lights. Warm, golden lights glowing from the windows like eyes staring back at me. No one should have been here. I killed the engine and sat there a moment, the ticking of cooling metal strangely loud in the cold air. The mountain air felt thinner than usual, or maybe it was my chest. I hadn't told anyone I was coming. The door opened before I reached it. My God, Dad. There he was, my son Daniel, taller than me now, broader, with lines at the corners of his eyes that I didn't remember watching form. He wore my old sweater, the one his mother had knitted decades ago, during a winter when laughter had filled our house like music instead of memory. Surprise, I said, though the word lodged somewhere between my throat and heart. Before I could say more, a woman appeared behind him. His wife, Layla, soft-spoken, polite, always slightly nervous around me, as though she thought I might crumble like old bark if touched too hard. Then more faces. An older woman with sharp eyes and a tighter smile. A man with a belly stretching his sweater into a drum. A teenager scrolling on her phone, barely glancing up. And a little boy, someone's nephew maybe, running across my wooden floors in socks. My lodge, my solitude, full of strangers. For a moment I simply stood there, the cold sneaking beneath my coat, roots of shock wrapping around my legs. We didn't think you'd be up here this winter, Daniel said, stepping aside. Come in, please. I walked past him inside, and I barely recognized the place. My fishing rods had been moved, my books rearranged. A garland hung around the antlers above the fireplace, and the old rug, the one my wife loved, was speckled with cookie crumbs. Dad, Daniel said quietly, we can explain. I wanted to ask 100 questions at once. Why, when, how, but all that came out was, how long? He swallowed. 3 months. My hands curled into tired fists at my sides. 3 months. 3 months of dinners, laughter, warmth, life. 3 months of them living here, in the place I went to remember how to breathe. Your mother's family was visiting, he continued. And then the lease on our apartment ended earlier than expected, and well, we thought the lodge was just sitting empty. We planned to ask, really, but then things just went fast. The older woman, his mother-in-law, came closer. We've taken good care of it, better than my son-in-law lets on, she said with a tilt of her head, as if I were a forgetful patient instead of the owner of the house she was standing in. I nodded once. Dinner was awkward. Voices clashed with the crackling fire. Laughter rose and fell like waves while I sat silent, chewing slower than time. They treated me like a guest in my own refuge, a welcome guest, but a guest nonetheless. After the dishes were cleared and people filtered to different corners of the house, I finally went outside. Snowflakes drifted lazily from a sky as dark as my mood. I heard the door open behind me. Dad. Daniel stepped out, closing the door softly. He rubbed his hands together, breath silver in the cold. For a moment he looked like he did when he was 10, small, nervous, unsure if he'd broken something he couldn't fix. I should have called you, he said. Yes, I replied. Silence stretched between us like growing ice. After Mom died, he said, voice brittle, this place always felt like yours. Sacred. I guess I thought if I asked you'd say no, and I didn't want to hear that. There it was, fear masquerading as convenience. I sighed, the sound fogging the air. This place isn't sacred because it is mine, I said softly. It's sacred because she loved it, because we built memories here instead of walls. He nodded, eyes glistening. And yet, I continued, gentler now, you built a wall between us instead of a bridge. His shoulders slumped, I know. For the next week we existed in an uneasy truce of kindness. His in-laws tried hard to be warm. His wife cooked meals and apologized too often. The little boy drew me pictures. Slowly, resentment thawed into something else, something like understanding. One morning, just before dawn, I woke to find Daniel on the porch, staring at the lake the way I used to. You ever feel, he asked without turning, like you're constantly choosing between being a good son and a good husband, a good father and a good man? I thought of the times I missed his school plays because of work, the nights I watched storms from this very porch instead of storms inside our house, the quiet sacrifices, the loud failures. All the time, I answered. We talked until the sky bled pink. Not everything was healed. Not everything needed to be forgiven immediately. But for the first time in a long time, we understood each other, not as roles, but as flawed humans doing the best we could. Eventually, we made a plan. They would stay 2 more weeks. We would repair the small damages, re-oil the floors, rehang the memories, and then they would leave, not because I demanded it, but because Daniel realized, without me ever saying so, that sanctuary only remains sanctuary when it is respected. On their last night, the house was quiet again. Not empty, just peaceful. Daniel hugged me before he left, not a polite hug, a child's hug disguised in adult arms. I won't shut you out again, he said. I won't disappear either, I replied. And we both meant it. When the truck finally disappeared down the winding road, silence returned to the lodge. But it no longer felt hollow. It felt like a friend sitting beside me, comfortable and warm. I lit the fire, poured tea, sat in my old chair. And for the first time since my wife died, the memories didn't ache like wounds. They wrapped around me like a blanket. Because I realized something simple. Sanctuary isn't a place. It's the people you're willing to let back in. Moral of the story. True peace doesn't come from isolating yourself from others. It comes from setting honest boundaries while still choosing connection. Communication, respect, and openness can heal distances that silence only widens.